The courtroom was packed, tension slicing through the air like a knife. Officer Brad Miller stood proudly at the witness stand, his badge gleaming under the lights as he confidently spun his story, a story that painted Maya Thompson, a calm and composed black woman in a gray business suit, as a violent suspect. "She resisted arrest, Your Honor," he said, voice steady. "She was shouting threats, disturbing public peace," the crowd murmured. Maya didn't blink. Her hands rested neatly on the table, fingers intertwined. She didn't need to defend herself, not yet. Because what no one in that courtroom knew was that Maya wasn't just any citizen. She was an undercover federal government inspector tasked with evaluating corruption and racial bias in local law enforcement. The irony was bitterly poetic. The very officer assigned to protect justice had just lied, under oath, to the person whose job was to judge him. As the judge leaned forward and the lawyer called for cross-examination, Maya's calm gaze met Brad's. For a brief moment, he felt a chill crawl up his spine. Because behind her silence, behind that quiet stare, was power, the kind that didn't shout, but dismantled entire systems with truth. And soon, Officer Miller would learn that lies in court could burn far hotter than any crime he'd ever faced. The courtroom was steeped in a heavy silence, the kind that presses down on your chest until breathing feels like a confession. Fluorescent lights hummed above, flickering occasionally, as if even they were nervous to illuminate the truth about to be twisted. Officer Brad Miller stood tall at the witness stand, his uniform crisp, his posture rehearsed. His blue eyes darted briefly toward Maya Thompson, the black woman seated calmly at the defense table, before settling on the judge. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady and sure. "The defendant, Ms. Thompson, became belligerent when I approached her vehicle. She refused to comply, raised her voice, and resisted arrest." The words dripped with false conviction. Maya sat quietly, hands clasped in front of her, the faintest glint of disbelief flashing in her eyes. Not surprise, but recognition. She had seen this before. Dozens of times in different faces, different uniforms. Her lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, rose immediately. "Objection, Your Honor. The officer's statement misrepresents," sustained. The judge interrupted. "Officer Miller, continue." Brad's smirk was small but visible, the smirk of a man who had learned long ago that the courtroom bent to his badge. "As I was saying, Ms. Thompson began shouting that I was targeting her. I tried to calm her down, but she pulled away and nearly struck me." "That's a lie," Maya whispered under her breath, her voice steady but low enough that only her lawyer could hear. Her mind drifted for a moment, back to that night. Flashback, 2 weeks earlier. It had been raining, the streets slick and shining like glass. Maya had parked outside a local grocery store, her federal credentials tucked neatly in her purse. She wasn't working that night, just running errands after a long day. When the patrol car pulled up behind her with lights flashing, she had immediately placed her hands on the steering wheel, calm and cautious. The officer, Brad Miller, had approached with that same smug confidence now parading through the courtroom. "Evening, ma'am. You in a hurry somewhere?" he'd asked, his flashlight grazing across her face, her hands, the dashboard. "No, officer," Maya had replied politely. "Is there a problem?" Brad had leaned closer, his tone shifting. "License and registration. You fit the description of a suspect involved in a disturbance nearby." Her brow furrowed. "Excuse me? I just came from the hospital. I'm not involved in anything." But Brad wasn't listening. He'd pulled the door handle before she could even hand over her ID. "Step out of the car." "Officer, please." I said step out. The scene had escalated quickly, too quickly. Brad's partner, Officer Daniels, lingered behind him, uneasy. Maya had stepped out slowly, hands visible, voice composed. "You're making a mistake," she said, rain soaking through her coat. Brad had grabbed her arm, twisting it just enough to make her wince. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting." Yet his report would later say otherwise. Back in the courtroom, Maya inhaled deeply, grounding herself. She had been trained to maintain composure in interrogation rooms, in board meetings, in the face of deceit. But hearing the lie replayed under oath struck something deeper than anger. It was the audacity, the utter belief that he could rewrite reality, and the system would nod along. Mr. Reynolds leaned closer and whispered, "We'll expose him soon. Just let him talk." Brad continued, building his narrative like a wall of stone. "When she began to struggle, I had no choice but to detain her. She yelled that I was harassing her because of her race. I remained professional at all times." Maya's lips twitched. Professional. That was the word they always used to polish cruelty. The judge scribbled notes. The prosecutor nodded. The audience watched with quiet sympathy, most unaware of who Maya truly was or why she sat so calm amid the storm. When the recess was called, Brad stepped out of the courtroom with his partner, Daniels. The hallway buzzed with murmurs, reporters whispering, cameras flashing. Brad chuckled, loosening his tie. You see that? She didn't even blink. Guess she knows it's over. Daniels looked uneasy. You sure you want to go this far, Brad? She didn't do anything violent. Brad scoffed. Doesn't matter. The jury believes the uniform. Always has, always will. He patted his badge with a smirk. She's done for. No one questions a cop. Maya stepped quietly out of the courtroom moments later, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. She caught the end of their conversation but didn't react. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Inside her, emotion brewed like a storm. The humiliation of being lied about, the anger of knowing truth meant nothing unless proven with evidence, and the calm fire of a woman who would not let injustice stand. She walked past Brad without a word, meeting his eyes briefly. For a moment, his grin faltered. Something in her gaze unsettled him, not fear, not defeat, but quiet power. As Maya exited the courthouse, she whispered to herself, "You lied in front of everyone, Officer Miller. But soon, you'll have to tell the truth in front of me." And with that, the stage was set. The lie had been spoken, but the reckoning had only just begun. The courthouse doors closed behind Maya with a soft thud, sealing in the echoes of lies and applause for a false hero. The night air was cool, yet heavy with the weight of injustice. She took a deep breath, walking toward her black sedan parked at the edge of the lot. Her hands were steady, her steps deliberate, the movements of someone who had rehearsed composure all her life. As she unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat, she reached into her bag, pulling out a small, encrypted communication device, a black rectangular unit that looked like an old pager but pulsed faint blue light when activated. She typed a short code, and within seconds, a voice crackled through her earpiece. Agent Thompson, report status. Maya's voice shifted, losing the softness she had shown in court. It was calm, professional, and precise, the voice of a federal agent. The suspect officer, Brad Miller, gave his testimony today. As predicted, he fabricated the entire encounter. Tone confident. No visible guilt indicators. Classic narcissistic projection. A pause, then a male voice, deep, controlled, and experienced, replied, "Any indication he suspects who you are?" "None," she said. "To him, I'm just another black woman he thinks he can discredit. And that's exactly how I need it to stay." There was a short silence. Then her superior's voice softened slightly. "Maya, you know the risks of going undercover without backup. You're not just proving him wrong. You're proving a system wrong." Her gaze hardened as she looked through the windshield at the courthouse steps, where Brad was still laughing with a group of fellow officers. "I know," she said, "and that's why I can't fail." She disconnected the line, setting the device aside. For a brief moment, her professional facade cracked, and the emotional weight of it all seeped through. Her reflection in the windshield looked tired, not from omission, but from years of watching injustice recycle itself like clockwork. Her mind drifted to a memory, one that fueled her every step in this fight. Flashback, 15 years earlier. A younger Maya sat in the back of a police cruiser, watching through tearful eyes as her older brother Devin was shoved against a wall by officers shouting orders. Devin had been walking home from work, carrying a sandwich and wearing his hospital scrubs. Someone had called in a report of a suspicious black male. "Officer, please." "He didn't do anything," young Maya cried. The officer turned, face cold. "Stay back, miss, or you'll be next." Devin looked at her and whispered, "It's okay, Maya. Just stay calm." But calm hadn't saved him. A false charge had followed, resisting arrest. A record that shattered his future. That night, something inside her changed. Back in the present, Maya wiped the tear that threatened to escape. "This one's for you, Devin," she whispered. She started the car and drove through the city lights, the radio playing softly, static mixed with faint jazz. Each intersection passed felt like a checkpoint in her mission. Her destination was an unmarked federal office tucked between two warehouses, unassuming, invisible to those who didn't know it existed. As she entered, the biometric scanner confirmed her identity, Inspector Maya Thompson. Level 7 clearance. Inside, the dim room was lined with screens, maps, and confidential files, a world hidden from public eyes. A man in his 50s, Agent Donovan, turned as she entered. He wore a gray suit and a look that balanced pride and worry. "You went through with the courtroom test, didn't you?" he asked. She nodded, placing a folder on the table. He lied exactly as expected. "I recorded every word." Donovan sighed, rubbing his temple. "You really think this one officer is worth all this risk?" Maya's expression didn't waver. "It's not about him. It's about what he represents." She leaned forward, her tone sharpening. "He saw a black woman. He didn't see an inspector. That's why he's about to lose more than his badge." Donovan's lips tightened, a reluctant smile forming. "You've got your father's stubbornness." "I've got my brother's memory," she corrected softly. They moved to a large monitor, reviewing evidence. On the screen appeared footage from a dash cam, grainy, but revealing enough. Officer Miller's words from that rainy night echoed, "You people never learn." Maya clenched her jaw. This wasn't just bias. This was abuse of power. Donovan folded his arms. "You're going to need more than that clip. The department's internal affairs will bury it unless you've got a full misconduct pattern." "I already have," she replied, pulling another file from her case. Inside were complaint reports, 34 of them, all involving Officer Miller. Most dismissed, a few inconclusive. Donovan looked stunned. 34. Maya nodded. "And not one disciplinary action. I also found body cam gaps in over half his patrol shifts. He's been doing this for years. I'm going to prove it in front of everyone." Her determination lit up the room. She was no longer just the woman sitting quietly in court. She was the storm that followed. Donovan looked at her for a long moment. "Just be careful, Maya. You're walking into a lion's den. If he catches even a hint of who you are," she interrupted, her voice calm and deadly certain. "He won't. He's too blinded by arrogance to look deeper." She packed the files, securing them in a coded briefcase. Before leaving, she glanced back at Donovan. "Tomorrow's hearing won't be just another testimony. It'll be the beginning of exposure." He exhaled slowly. "You sure you're ready for that kind of war?" Maya looked at him with eyes that held both pain and power. "I've been ready since the day they took my brother." She stepped out into the cold night again, pulling her coat tighter as the wind howled down the empty street. Her reflection glimmered in the office glass, half shadow, half light, the face of a woman carrying two burdens, justice and restraint. Behind her calm eyes burned a promise that the truth, buried beneath badges and bureaucracy, was about to rise. And this time it wouldn't whisper. It would roar. Rain pelted the windows of Maya's apartment that night, each drop echoing the heaviness in her mind. Her desk was cluttered with files, paper trails of misconduct reports, dashcam transcripts, complaint dismissals, each one a small, silent cry buried in bureaucracy. The soft hum of her laptop filled the room as she cross-referenced dates, connecting red pins on her evidence board with string. Each line drew the same conclusion. Officer Brad Miller wasn't an isolated problem. He was a symptom of something far deeper. Maya leaned back in her chair, exhaustion creeping into her eyes. On the wall, a photo of her brother Devin smiled at her, young, bright-eyed, hopeful. "You said you wanted to make the world better," she whispered. "Looks like I'm finally getting close." Her encrypted phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A low, familiar male voice came through. "Agent Thompson." "It's Daniels." She froze. Officer Daniels, Brad's old partner. The one who had stood behind him that night in the rain, silent, uneasy. Maya's tone hardened. "You shouldn't be calling me Daniels." "If he finds out—" "I know," he interrupted, voice shaking slightly. "That's why I'm calling. I can't live with it anymore. What he did, what we did, it's eating me alive." She paused, her instincts sharp. "Meet me, but not anywhere public." An hour later, they met at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. The neon, open, sign flickered weakly in the rain. Daniels sat in the far booth, his eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. His hands trembled around his coffee cup. When Maya slid into the seat across from him, she noticed the guilt in his posture. He wasn't the confident cop she'd seen before. He looked like a man haunted by his own reflection. "You came," he said quietly. "I had to," Maya replied. "You said you have information." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Brad's been lying for years. It's not just you. There were others, a lot of others. He plants evidence, writes false reports, threatens civilians who complain. I stayed quiet because it was easier. Easier than justice." Maya's tone was sharp, controlled. Daniels looked down. You don't understand. The department protects its own. You speak up, you're done. They'll bury your badge, your pension, your life. But I can't keep pretending I didn't see it. He slid a small flash drive across the table. Maya's pulse quickened. What's this? Recordings. From my personal body cam archives, the ones the department lost. They show what really happened during those stops. I backed them up before Internal Affairs deleted them. Maya reached for it slowly. You're risking everything giving me this. Daniels exhaled shakily. Maybe it's time someone did. You're not just exposing him, you're exposing me too. But maybe it's time someone did. For the first time, Maya saw sincerity in his eyes, the kind born from regret and fear blended with courage. She nodded. I'll use it. But understand this, once this comes out, there's no going back. You'll have to testify. Daniels stared at his reflection in the window for a long moment. Then I'll testify. Maya smiled faintly, a rare moment of warmth breaking through her steel composure. Good. Then we start tomorrow. Back at her office, she loaded the flash drive into a secure laptop. The screen lit up with a list of video files labeled by date and badge number. She clicked one. Grainy footage appeared. Officer Miller shoving a young black teenager against a wall, laughing with another officer. Didn't your kind learn anything from last time? His voice was cold, casual cruelty. The teen's terrified voice cracked. I didn't do anything. Maya's jaw clenched. She clicked another file, a woman crying on the side of the road while Brad falsified her sobriety test. Then another, an old man pushed down during a search. No resistance, no justification. It was worse than she imagined. By the time dawn broke, she had compiled hours of damning evidence. Her plan had crystallized. She would set up a sting operation. She'd bait him into revealing his true nature, live, recorded, and undeniable. That morning, Maya donned a navy coat and clipped a micro body cam beneath her lapel. The camera blinked green, feeding to a secure federal channel monitored by Agent Donovan. Testing feed, she said. Donovan's voice crackled in her earpiece. Audio clear. Visual steady. You sure you want to do this solo? I started it solo, she replied. I'll finish it solo. She parked her car near Brad's usual patrol route. The street was quiet, small shops, a diner, a few pedestrians. She waited until his cruiser pulled up, his familiar smirk greeting her through the open window. Well, Brad said, stepping out. Didn't think I'd see you around here again. Shouldn't you be in court crying to your lawyer? Maya's tone was icy calm. Actually, I wanted to talk. No lawyers. Just you and me. Brad chuckled. Oh, this ought to be good. What's this? Some pity meeting before you lose. She folded her arms. Tell me, Officer Miller, do you ever stop lying, or is it just muscle memory now? His smile faltered. Careful what you say, lady. Oh, I'm very careful, she said, glancing subtly toward the hidden lens. Because this time, the truth's watching. He took a step closer, jaw tightening. You think you can intimidate me? You're nobody. Maya's eyes met his, steady and fearless. We'll see who's nobody when the world watches you prove exactly who you are. For a fleeting second, he looked unsure, like a man sensing a trap, but too arrogant to admit it. He sneered. You're playing a dangerous game. No, she said softly, almost whispering. I'm ending one. As she walked away, the camera blinked red, live transmission active. Donovan's voice came through, filled with restrained awe. Got everything, Agent Thompson. He just hung himself with his own words. Maya exhaled slowly, looking up at the morning sky. The clouds had begun to part, sunlight peeking through. The unmasking had begun. And soon, the entire system would have no choice but to face the reflection it had been avoiding for years. The morning of the second hearing dawned with a stillness that felt deliberate, almost sacred. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, microphones flashing like strobe lights as whispers filled the air. Is she really innocent? They say she's suing the entire department. That officer's record is spotless until now. Maya Thompson walked through the crowd with the grace of someone untouched by the chaos around her. Dressed in a navy suit, her chin high, she exuded calm, not arrogance, not fear, but certainty. Her lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, walked beside her, holding a folder so thick it seemed to hold the weight of a nation's conscience. Inside, the same courtroom that had once echoed with lies now sat on the edge of revelation. Judge Harper adjusted his glasses, glancing down at the case file. We are reconvening the case of State versus Thompson. Officer Miller, you may continue your testimony. Brad Miller rose confidently, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. He stood tall at the witness stand again, every inch the image of a proud officer defending his word. Yes, Your Honor, he began smoothly. As I stated before, Ms. Thompson became hostile during our interaction. I feared for my safety and acted according to protocol. Maya sat motionless, her hands folded neatly on the table. Her eyes were calm, too calm, and it unsettled him in ways he couldn't explain. Mr. Reynolds stood, clearing his throat. Your Honor, before Officer Miller continues, my client would like to submit new evidence to the court. The room buzzed instantly. The prosecutor frowned. New evidence? At this stage? Reynolds met his glare evenly. Yes. Evidence that will prove beyond any doubt that my client's arrest was not only unlawful, but fabricated. Judge Harper raised a brow. Proceed. Reynolds opened the folder, sliding a small USB drive toward the bailiff. This contains multiple body cam recordings obtained through a legal whistleblower source within the department. These videos, Your Honor, show the true events of that night, and more. Brad's confident smile flickered just slightly. The lights dimmed as the courtroom projector hummed to life. The first clip appeared on the screen, grainy night footage. Rain. A parked car. Maya's voice calm, polite. Then, the unmistakable image of Officer Brad Miller yanking her car door open without provocation. His voice, crystal clear. Step out of the car. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The video continued. Brad twisting her arm as she complied. Her voice trembling. I'm not resisting. His reply. Yeah, you people always say that. The words hung in the air like poison. Even the prosecutor froze. Brad shot up from his seat. That's edited. It's not real. Reynolds turned, eyes sharp. Is that your voice, Officer Miller? I don't recall saying that. Reynolds pressed play again. The next clip showed Brad and another officer, Daniels, back at their patrol car. Brad laughed, tossing a small evidence bag on the dashboard. She's done. They'll believe me before they ever believe her. The room erupted in whispers. A woman in the audience covered her mouth. The judge banged his gavel. Order. I will have order. When the noise finally subsided, the judge looked at Brad with a hardened expression. Officer Miller, care to explain this footage? Brad's face had drained of color. Sweat rolled down his temple. Why, Your Honor, these videos were taken out of context. They're deep fakes. This is... Maya stood slowly, her calmness slicing through his panic like a blade. No need, Your Honor. The truth explains itself. Her voice was low, steady, and devastating. Reynolds turned to the judge again. Furthermore, Your Honor, the whistleblower who provided this footage is ready to testify in court today. His name is Officer Daniel Harper, Mr. Miller's former partner. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Daniel stepped in, his uniform pressed, his eyes heavy with guilt. The entire courtroom turned. Brad's mouth dropped open. Daniels, what the hell are you doing? Daniels took the stand. Telling the truth, he said quietly. I was there. I saw everything. She never resisted. He planted the evidence. And it's not the first time. The crowd murmured louder now. Anger, disbelief, vindication. The judge looked to Brad again, his tone icy. Officer Miller, these are serious accusations supported by direct video and eyewitness testimony. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Brad's voice cracked. I was under pressure. They told us to keep numbers up, to show control. I didn't mean. Maya's eyes softened for the first time. You meant every word, officer. You just never thought someone like me would have the power to hold you accountable. Silence. Heavy, raw final. Judge Harper straightened. Officer Miller, you are hereby suspended from duty pending a full internal affairs investigation. Given the overwhelming evidence presented, the court finds Ms. Thompson not guilty on all charges. Furthermore, these proceedings will be referred to federal oversight. The gavel struck once, sharp and echoing. Maya closed her eyes, a single tear slipping free. It wasn't relief, it was justice finally breathing. As reporters rushed to the courthouse doors, Brad sat collapsed in his chair, staring blankly at the floor. The badge that once made him untouchable now felt like a shackle around his neck. Maya turned to Daniels, who stood trembling beside the witness stand. You did the right thing, she said softly. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I should have done it sooner. As she stepped outside, Flashes erupted from cameras, voices calling her name. But she didn't pause. She didn't need to speak. The truth had already done that for her. And for the first time in years, Maya Thompson felt the weight of her brother's memory lift, not gone, but honored. Justice had finally spoken. The city buzzed with scandal. What had once been a quiet courtroom drama had erupted into a full-blown media firestorm. Every local news channel flashed the same image: Officer Brad Thompson, the man once hailed as the face of community policing, being escorted out of the precinct in handcuffs, his head bowed under the weight of disgrace. Maya watched from a distance, standing at the edge of the courthouse steps. The same steps where Brad had once lied about her, calm, collected, and cruelly convincing. Now, the very stone beneath his boots seemed to tremble with poetic justice. Reporters swarmed the area, microphones thrust forward, questions slicing through the cool morning air. "Officer Thompson, do you deny fabricating your report?" one shouted. "Were you aware Miss Thompson was a federal inspector?" another yelled. Brad didn't respond. His jaw clenched, his eyes hollow. For the first time, the man who thrived on control looked utterly powerless. Inside the courthouse, internal affairs agents had already begun their sweep. Every report Brad had filed in the past 5 years was being reopened. Dozens of citizens came forward, mostly people of color, claiming he had manipulated evidence or intimidated witnesses. One name after another appeared, painting a chilling picture of systematic abuse hidden beneath his hero cop persona. Maya had known corruption existed within systems. She'd studied it, fought it, written about it. But to see it unravel before her eyes, to watch a man so used to silencing others finally be stripped of power, it was both satisfying and deeply tragic. Later that day, she was approached by a local journalist, a woman with a camera crew and spark of curiosity in her eyes. "Ms. Thompson," the reporter began, "now that your identity as a federal investigator has been revealed, what would you say to those who still believe justice is blind?" Maya paused, her expression soft but steady. She glanced toward the courthouse doors, where Brad's reflection flickered briefly in the glass before being swallowed by the shadows inside. Then, with quiet conviction, she replied, "Justice sees everything. It's people who choose to close their eyes." The soundbite went viral overnight. Millions watched as her calm defiance echoed through headlines and timelines. Social media flooded with messages of support, not just for Maya, but for everyone who had ever been wronged by someone hiding behind authority. Brad's trial was swift. Evidence of misconduct piled high, from falsified testimonies to illegal searches. When the verdict came, guilty on multiple counts of perjury and obstruction, the courtroom fell silent except for the muffled sobs of his wife. Brad stared ahead, his once confident blue eyes dimmed to gray. After the sentencing, Maya didn't celebrate. There were no triumphant smiles, no sense of victory, only the quiet understanding that justice, while served, came too late for those already scarred by his lies. That evening, Maya drove out of the city. The streets faded into long stretches of cracked pavement until she reached a small, neglected park on the outskirts of town. The same park where years ago her younger brother had been wrongfully arrested, a night that had changed her life forever. The lamppost where he'd been handcuffed still stood, rusted but unbroken. Maya knelt beside it, running her hand over the cold metal. Memories flooded back, her brother's trembling voice, the officer's laughter, the helplessness in her mother's eyes. "Hey, Marcus," she whispered. "It's done." She closed her eyes, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. "They can't hurt anyone else. Not like they hurt you." A gentle wind stirred the fallen leaves, and for a fleeting second, she felt something, peace, perhaps, or maybe forgiveness. She took a deep breath, stood up, and looked toward the horizon. The city skyline shimmered in the distance, a mosaic of light and shadow. Justice wasn't perfect. It never would be. But tonight it felt real. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed, another message from the agency. They wanted her back in Washington to lead a task force investigating systemic bias in law enforcement. Maya smiled faintly. It was time to go back, not as a victim but as a force of change. When she reached her car, she glanced once more at the park. "Thank you, little brother," she murmured. "You gave me the reason to fight." The engine started softly, and as the car rolled away, the first stars began to pierce the night sky, silent witnesses to a justice long delayed but finally delivered. Months had passed since Officer Brad Thompson's sentencing, but the city hadn't forgotten. His name no longer echoed in praise, it lingered in lessons. The police department had undergone a reckoning. New training programs were underway, accountability boards were formed, and Maya Thompson, once falsely accused, now rightfully respected, was at the forefront of it all. Maya had accepted the role of Director of Ethical Oversight, a newly created federal position designed to ensure transparency in law enforcement. Every morning when she walked through the marble halls of the Justice Department in Washington, her badge glimmered not as a symbol of authority, but of responsibility. She carried with her the memory of every voice silenced by bias, every case buried by lies, and every moment when courage refused to bow to fear. But even as reforms began, something in her heart felt incomplete. Justice had been served in court, yes, but what about healing? What about rebuilding the humanity that lies and power had destroyed? One gray afternoon, she visited a community service event at a youth center in her old neighborhood. The place was alive with laughter, kids playing basketball, volunteers painting murals, and music spilling from a portable speaker. It was a sight that reminded her of what true community looked like before distrust had crept in. And then, as she stepped into the main hall, she froze. There he was, Brad Thompson. No uniform, no badge, just an orange vest, sweeping the floor beside a group of teenagers who clearly had no idea who he once was. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them carried too much history: lies, humiliation, courtroom silence. Then Brad slowly set his broom aside and turned to face her. "Maya," he said quietly, "didn't think I'd ever see you again." She studied him. His posture was different, no arrogance, no edge. Just weariness, humility, regret. His once perfect haircut was uneven, and his hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "I'm here for the kids," she finally said. "They're painting a mural about trust, about what it means to rebuild it." Brad nodded, his voice breaking. "I ruined my life. I ruined a lot of lives." Maya took a step closer, her expression softening. "No, you're rebuilding it," she said gently. "Start by seeing people, not suspects." The words landed deep. Brad swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. For the first time, he didn't have a defense. He just nodded. They stood in silence for a moment, two people on opposite ends of the same truth, connected now not by anger, but by understanding. Then a young boy approached, holding out a paintbrush. "Ma'am," the boy said to Maya, "can he help us too?" Maya smiled faintly and nodded. "Yes," she said, "he can help." Brad hesitated, then knelt beside the boy and dipped the brush into blue paint. Together, they began adding a patch of sky to the mural, a horizon stretching over the painted words, "Justice begins with truth." That single act, that simple moment, became something sacred. Not about forgiveness, not yet, but about humanity. Weeks later, at a national press conference, Maya stood before cameras and officials to announce the National Integrity in Policing Initiative, a program inspired by her own experience. Behind her, projected on the screen, was the same mural from that youth center, Brad's blue sky shining brightly above it. Her voice carried with quiet power as she addressed the nation. Justice isn't about punishment alone. It's about prevention. It's about courage to correct, not conceal. We can't rewrite our past, but we can set a new standard for what comes next. The badge should never be a shield for lies. It should be a light for truth. Applause erupted across the room, but Maya remained still for a moment, gazing at the mural image. In that painted sky, she saw something more than a policy or reform. She saw hope. Later that evening, as she left the conference hall, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was Brad. "Thank you for letting me try again." Maya smiled softly. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Outside, dusk had begun to fall, and the Capitol dome glowed under the fading sun. Maya walked down the steps, her reflection mirrored in the marble walls. She thought of Marcus, her brother, the reason she had chosen this path. She thought of all the voices that had been silenced but now echoed through change. As she reached her car, a group of young cadets walked past her, whispering her name with admiration. One of them, a young black woman in uniform, turned back and said, "Ma'am, you're the reason I joined. You made me believe this badge could mean something again." Maya's heart swelled. She smiled and replied, "Then make it mean everything." As she drove away, the night sky opened above her, clear and endless, the same color as the mural's painted blue. The narrator's voice closed softly in the distance. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. And in doing so, she reminded the world that justice without compassion is only half the truth.